Hello, welcome to Gardeners'World. Now, as you can see, I'm not at Longmeadow. I haven't got Nigel and Nelly with me because tonight is a special programme looking at the influence of Southern Asia on our gardens. As can be seen here at this wonderful Hindu temple in London, the conjunction of British and South Asian horticulture is changing the way that we garden. We should be meeting people who have created gardens based upon the roots and culture of the Indian subcontinent.
What I remember from my childhood is my mum's beautiful saris, and I have now started to bring that colour into my garden design.
Carol will be looking at some of the South Asian plants that have become common in our garden.
Lots of these plants are stalwarts in our beds, borders and rockeries.
A visit to the orchid unit at Kew, where Balak and Pali is doing important work.
I love my job because I can always say that when I come to work, I can always say this is my office.
Francis and Nick are talking to allotmenteers.
Wow, so this is your bottle gourd setup.
Tastes fantastic when it's fresh off the plant.
But first I am here at BAPS Swaminarayan Mandir in Neaston. This mandir was completed in 1995 with all the extraordinary stonework carved in India, shipped over to London and then assembled in situ. A mandir is a Sanskrit word meaning to still the mind, as well as a temple. And that process of stilling the mind is very important. The design of the temple and the gardens that surround it are all part of a process of sloughing off the busy world around you, and then slowly, as you get closer and closer to the centre, reaching a state of spiritual and mental calm. To find out more about the interplay between the building and the garden, I'm meeting a temple volunteer, Sunita Patel. Tell me how the garden relates to the mandir in its whole.
The gardens are absolutely part of the experience. When you walk in the front gate, the first thing you see is the gardens. It automatically starts to calm you, starts to bring a bit of peace within you. It's almost like you're being elevated to a higher kind of pitch. So when you get to the top, you forget absolutely everything that you've done up to that point. You leave the world behind you and you enter something far greater than yourself.
Is there any significance in the way that the paths have been laid or the fountains or whatever?
So the formal gardens have 3 interconnecting walkways. One of the bigger shapes there represents the sun, the medium-sized one represents the earth, and the smaller one represents the moon. And they're there really to show us our connection with nature and also the universe around us. Nature is such an important part of Hinduism, and one of the great things about this garden is it's a perfect blend of East and West. It's classically Western in its parterre style, but it's also traditionally Indian as well in some of the designs that we have. You'll have noticed some Indian motifs in the garden. One of those is a lotus flower.
The lotus flower is really important, isn't it? Tell me why.
The lotus flower is such a beautiful flower because of what it represents. So the lotus sits on top of water, surrounded by impurities, and yet it remains completely untouched by them and completely pure. So we almost need to live like a lotus. We are surrounded in the outside world by so much materialism, bad influences, vices, which we so easily get sucked into, but we need to strive to live apart from that and sit above the water like a lotus and remain untouched by it all.
I like the idea of being a lotus flower.
Yes, yeah.
It's very beautiful. What I find fascinating about this garden is this mixture of Western and Hindu, of British and and Indian, so you have the parterre, and nothing can be more Western than that. But it's not geometrical, it's not symmetrical. Instead, you have a snaking pattern infilled with this incredible burst of colour from the dahlias and the begonias and the cosmos and the pansies. And anybody who has been to India knows that colour is such a central part of Hinduism. And yet the whole thing comes together with a quiet grace that is completely at one with the spirituality of the mandir. Later on, we'll be seeing how flowers are used in the rituals of the temple, and also seeing how the lotus, the symbol of the lotus, is actually a really important part of the structure of the architecture that represent the South Asian influence in our gardens. Now we're going to hear from the first of three people, giving us a personal insight into what gardening means to them, starting with Sunil Patel.
My family are from the northwest of India, and it's very agricultural there, and the rural gardens are kind of jungly. There's ornamentals mixed in with edibles, and it's just a tropical mess, you could say, and I loved it. It's almost an Indian version of cottage-style gardening. Childhood holidays and memories of going to India and the tropical environment has made its way into the garden. So I love having lush, full planting that's dense, and the plants are all crammed in together and jostling for space, and I will plant things far too close together just to get an abundant look that's spilling out the borders. The impression I want to give is a garden that is just on the tipping point of going completely out of control. It's a feeling of abundance and lushness that I think does hark back to seeing tropical environments. It's just about having a really beautiful garden that people can stand and look at and go, wow.
That sense of pride and joy in the plot or green space that a gardener creates isn't just limited to growing ornamental plants. On allotments all over the country, plants and crops have been introduced by growers from all over the Indian subcontinent. And Nick Bailey has been to Birmingham, to the Walsall Road allotments, which I remember visiting myself some years ago, to meet some of these growers.
The allotment, it's the perfect escape from the hustle and bustle of city life. A patch of land where you can grow fruits and vegetables, meet local people, and bring a bit of countryside close to your front door. There are 104 plots here, with 11 of those belonging to people with South Asian origins. Jazz only came to allotment growing 2 years ago, but is proving to be a successful vegetable grower.
I love cooking and working with food, and this is what inspired me to take on allotments and grow my own food.
Now, I understand your parents were born in Bangladesh. Is the sort of things they would have been growing back at home?
Absolutely. Most of the stuff I grow now, bottle gourds, lab beans, is what we've been brought up on. And obviously feed that to my children, which they'll carry on the culture as well.
Before, but actually it's related to squash and pumpkin and courgettes, isn't it?
That's right, yeah, it's the same family, but we haven't heard of it because we're not used to it in our cuisine in England, but because I've been brought up with it, and it tastes fantastic when it's fresh off the plant.
But I must tell you, I've tried to grow them in the past, and I have failed monumentally. You've clearly got it right, there's lots of fruit on here. Where did I go wrong?
Well, this is how they grow them in Bangladesh.
Okay.
Instead of timber, they use bamboo. It's about 4.5 foot off the ground, because the plant probably extends about 6 meters, and most of the fruit grow in the middle of that. And the gravity pulls them down and makes them fat. It's like putting water in a balloon where it hangs down, and that's the secret.
It's fantastic to see that you've got this growing here. Now, I know it as Colocasia esculenta. It gets called taro as well, but I think there's another common name for it in Bangladesh.
We call the fruit muki, and the leaves, we call them khusu, and you can eat both.
So, how did you grow these?
I bought them from the shop, and they look like this. And we left them in the dark for about a week or two, like cheating potatoes, and they sprouted up. And I dug about a foot deep, put some manure in, and I just left them, and I forgot about them, and they've come up.
Normally at this time of year, you'd expect them to be sort of up here with leaves of this size. So I think when you go for it next year, if you do a bit more shallow, and I think you'll get a really good result. Well, I think you've done amazingly well to grow so many of these tropical plants here in Birmingham.
Thank you very much, Steve.
A vast majority of the South Asian community have farming and agriculture in their blood. Lakhbir and Ravinder, a Sikh couple who grew up in the state of Punjab in rural India. Back there, they would have farmed land to sustain their families. Does having all of this here remind you of being back home in Punjab?
ਪਿੰਡ ਦਾ ਆਪਣੇ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਬਹੁਤ ਚਿੱਤੇ ਆਉਂਦਾ ਇਹ ਖੇਤਾਂ 'ਚ ਵੀ ਕੰਮ ਉੱਥੇ ਕਰੀਦਾ ਸੀ ਤੇ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਉਹੀ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਹੀ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਵੀ ਜਦੋਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਇੱਥੇ ਆ ਵੜਦੇ ਆਂ ਆਉਂਦੇ ਆਂ ਅਸੀਂ
I see all sorts of exotic and unusual things. How are you managing to grow them here?
ਅਸੀਂ ਇੱਥੇ ਜਿੱਦਾਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਨੇ ਵੱਡਾਂ ਬੀਜੀਆਂ ਆ ਮੇਥੇ ਲਾਉਨੇ ਆ ਧਨੀਆ ਲਾਉਨੇ ਆ ਪਾਲਕ ਬੀਜਦੇ ਆ ਗੰਢੇ ਲਾਉਨੇ ਆ ਆਪਣੇ ਛੋਲੇ ਲਾਉਨੇ ਆ ਚੱਕੀ ਤੇ ਕਾਫੀ ਮਤਲਬ ਇੰਡੀਆ ਦਾ ਅਸੀਂ ਗਰੋ ਕਰਦੇ ਆ ਇੱਥੇ.
So I've tried growing chickpeas in London, but I found each individual plant I was probably only getting 6 or 7 peas from, and I can see yours are absolutely smothered. So what was I getting wrong?
ਛੋਲੇ ਬੀਜਣੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਸੌਖੇ ਇਹਨੂੰ ਕੁਛ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰਨਾ ਪੈਂਦਾ ਇੰਨੀ ਗੁਡਾਈ ਵੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰਨੀ ਪੈਂਦੀ ਖਾਦ ਵੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਪਾਉਣੀ ਪੈਂਦੀ ਇੱਕ ਡਿਪੈਂਡ ਮੌਸਮ ਤੇ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਮੀਂਹ ਪੈਂਦਾ ਫਿਰ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਤੇ ਥੋੜਾ ਮੀਂਹ ਘੱਟ ਪੈਂਦਾ ਫਿਰ ਸੋਹਣੇ ਹੋ ਜਾਂਦੇ
ਮਤਲਬ ਵਧੀਆ ਤਾਂ ਮਤਲਬ ਸਹਿਜ ਬੀਜਦੇ ਆ ਇਹ ਬੂਟੇ ਪਲਾਂਟ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਮਰਦੇ ਆ ਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਕੋਈ ਫਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਫਿਰ ਜਾਂ ਉੱਪਰੋਂ ਕੱਟ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਜਾਵੇ ਤੇ ਕੱਟ ਕੇ ਤਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਉਹ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਫੈਲਦੇ ਆ
ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਕੀਤਾ ਸੀ ਨਾ ਅਸੀਂ ਗੁਰਦੁਆਰੇ ਲਈ ਕੱਦੂ ਬੀਜਣੇ ਆ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਐਸ ਅਲੋਟਮੈਂਟ 'ਚ ਬੀਜੇ ਸੀਗੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਲੱਗੇ ਸੀ ਸਾਡੇ ਉਹ ਬੈਲਟਰ ਕੰਮ ਕਰਦੇ ਸੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਬੈਨ ਭਰ ਕੇ ਕੱਦੂਆਂ ਦੀ ਤੋੜੀ ਸੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਤੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਵੱਡੇ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਉਹ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਚਾਦਰ 'ਚ ਪਾ ਕੇ ਕੱਢਦੇ ਆ ਛੋਟੇ ਹੱਥ ਚੁੱਕ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਇੰਨੇ ਵੱਡੇ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਕਈ ਵਾਰ ਤਾਂ
How many times a week do you come and work on the allotment, and what's it to your lifestyle?
ਮੈਂ ਤਾਂ ਐਵਰੀਡੇ ਆਉਣਾ ਕੰਮ ਤੋਂ ਆ ਕੇ ਮੈਂ 5-7 ਮਿੰਟ ਘਰ ਬਹਿਣਾ ਤੇ ਮੈਂ ਇੱਥੇ ਅਲੋਟਮੈਂਟ ਨੂੰ ਆ ਜਾਣਾ ਤੇ ਆਪਣੀ ਇੰਜੋਏ ਕਰਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਮੇਰਾ ਕੰਮ ਥੋੜਾ ਵਾਲਾ ਕਰਨ ਵਾਲਾ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਗੁੱਡਣੇ ਵਾਲਾ ਗੁੱਡਦਾ ਪਾਣੀ ਦੇਣੇ ਵਾਲਾ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਪਾਣੀ ਦਿੰਦਾ ਮੈਂ ਵੀ ਤੇ ਖੁਸ਼ ਰਹਿਣਾ ਮੈਂ ਜਿਉਂ ਫਸਲ ਵੱਡੀ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਆ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਦੇਖ ਕੇ ਆਪਣਾ ਵੀ ਮਨ ਖੁਸ਼ ਹੁੰਦਾ
When I visited those Walsall Road allotments myself some 15 years ago, I was struck by the diversity and the range of the crops, some of which I confess I had never come across before, and I'm glad to see that that tradition is still going strong. But it's not just edible plants that enrich our gardens. There are new gardens being made now by those with a culture and their roots based in the Indian subcontinent. And Joe went along to meet Hasruti Patel, who has made just such a garden.
I've travelled quite a lot, and I believe that gardening and plants are a universal language and everybody has their own story to tell. Now, I'm in a suburban garden in Middlesex to visit a garden maker, taken her inspiration from India. This is Hasruti Patel. She's created this idyllic garden celebrating her family roots as well as her strong passion for gardening.
Hasruti, what a beautiful garden you have.
Thank you, Joe.
It's absolutely gorgeous. It's so lush and green. But where did it start? How did this garden all come about?
We moved into the house about 25 years ago, and then initially I didn't do that much in the garden, but I would say the last 5 or 6 years I've started taking more and more of an interest. I've just had more time, and as I've learned more, I've wanted to learn more.
You're a big traveller, aren't you?
Yes, we do travel a lot, and especially back to India. At least once or twice a year we go back to India, yes. The summers there, you think, I'd like to take some of this back to London, you know, the warmth and the lushness. So that's how it's grown.
How would you say we garden over here as opposed to gardening in India? How do the gardens differ?
People's gardens are very relaxed. Things are just allowed to grow, and they're not manicured as much as gardens. We have our rhododendrons here, which, if you've been to India, you see them around Shimla and Darjeeling. And because it's on a slope, we've done our rolling hills of Shimla here.
They're incredibly healthy, aren't they? Is this acidic soil you've got here then?
No, lots of ericaceous, leaving the leaves from the beech hedge and letting them rot down.
Yeah, the leaf mould to the,
That's right.
acidity.
Yeah.
And do you have to, I mean, it's been so dry this year. Have you watered these at all, or have they just got their roots nice and deep down?
We're making sure that they're well watered because in India, this is the monsoon season, July, August, and that's when they set their buds down. And if they go dry, these buds will drop off, and I won't have any colour next year.
Yeah, well, if you're doing it right, it looks great. I bet in spring it's an absolute joy.
It is beautiful, yeah. So here we've got the bananas that we've put in, and that really reminds me of India because we use them for cooking, for prayers and puja and things. And most houses in South India have a banana tree in the yard. Most of them do.
When you say cooking,
yeah.
do you actually eat part of the banana?
No, you don't eat the banana, but you use the leaf as almost like a foil. So for steaming vegetables and things, you make a pocket out of it, and you can use it for that.
I'm going to show off now, because I've got one of these in my garden.
Have you?
But I've released it out of the pot, so it's in the ground, and they get enormous. And the leaves are twice as big as your leaves. And I've actually had fruit on it. I've had bananas on it. Yeah, tiny little bananas. They're not edible, they're full of seeds. But, you know, you could, because you've got a couple of them, you could think about releasing one out into the garden.
Well, there is a long-term plan of doing that, of putting them into the ground, yeah.
And they're just fabulous architectural plants, aren't they?
Exactly. Tropical and lush and green, yeah.
Her Shruti has also spent a fair amount of time and effort on her front garden.
We used to have a very big hedge here, a laurel hedge that had to come out. And then after that, we decided that we're just going to be a little bit relaxed with this bed. So as you can see, it's a little bit like India, a bit chaotic, but colourful.
Slightly riotous, are we allowed to say that?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Why not? You know, no rules in this bed. We put in what we want to, and it works.
So the sweet peas just billowing over, you know, the front of the fence.
The sweet peas remind me of the bougainvilleas out in India, but we can't grow them very well.
No.
So this just gives me a taste of that kind of colour and the look as well.
Oh, so you've interpreted the spirit.
That's right, and then just make it work for the site that you have.
Yeah, so quite a few of these plants just self-seed around. You let them do their own thing?
Yeah, definitely. It's nice to let the garden find its own balance. So Joe, we also have a family ritual of picking something from the garden every morning to make sure that you think of everything around you being given to you by God as a gift, and it's just nice to then take it and offer it back to him as well.
Okay, so what are you looking for in particular?
Mostly scent. Over here what we've got is the star jasmine. This is one of my go-to ones.
Yeah, it's one of my favourite climbers actually. I mean, evergreen, beautiful scent.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Oh, it's absolutely gorgeous, isn't it?
Gorgeous, yeah.
Wonderful. So, Shruti, what would you say your garden means to you?
I just feel so privileged to live in a space like this, and the fact that I can open my back door and this is where I am. Everything's growing, so it's all stimulated and growing, but it has the effect of really calming a person down, and it's just wonderful, wonderful, wonderful thing to do.
We are used to gardens drawing our inspiration from nature, and I have to say I love the idea of taking the essence of Shimla and bringing it to a British back garden. Here at the Mandir, the architecture has references to the natural world. And above all, everywhere, there are flowers of some sort. Flowers carved into the marble of the columns and the limestone outside. High above the centre of the temple is this great dome, and it's topped by the representation of a lotus flower, and it is in two separate pieces of stone, and this was held up by scaffolding until those two pieces of stone were settled into position, and the scaffolding was taken away, and the building is locked secure, locked into place by the glory of a flower. Flowers are not only depicted in the architectural fabric of the Mandir, they're also offered as devotion in daily rituals. used to adorn the murtis or deities. Here in the UK, we're used to seeing thousands of varieties of plants in our gardens, many of which have become so familiar that you could be forgiven for thinking that they were native. And Carol has visited the Royal Botanic Gardens in Edinburgh to celebrate the plants that we all know, and some that perhaps we don't realise, originate from Southern Asia.
It's easy to assume when you walk around your garden that somehow the plants in it have always been there. In actual fact, the plants there have been gathered from all four corners of the world. Our gardens are a melting pot of floral immigration, and that's what gives them their excitement, their marvellous colours, and some of the most exciting plants of all come from the Indian subcontinent. We revel in the diversity of colour and form of rhododendrons, one of our favourite spring-flowering shrubs. More than 100 of them, species and hybrids, come from India. In late spring, Clematis montana, whose ancestors originate in the northern regions of the subcontinent, clothe our walls and fences, decked in their pink and white flowers. Later, the bewitching blooms of Meconopsis, the Himalayan blue poppy, are always a talking point. Plants like those were brought to our shores by intrepid and enterprising plant hunters. Some of the very first and some of the most pioneering studied here at the Royal Botanic Gardens, Edinburgh, which has a rich array of plants from South Asia. Lots of these plants are stalwarts in British gardens in our beds, borders and rockeries. Bachelor utilis occurs all across the Himalayas, including in Nepal. Utilis just means useful, because it's been used for buildings, for making paper, for all manner of things. It has huge religious significance too. People take its peeling bark and write little prayers on it and collect them in their amulets. It's a very variable species, and it's become incredibly popular in British gardens, especially in its form Bachelor utilis jackmontii, the white-barked birch. Garden designers just love it, and very often it's grown as a multi-stemmed tree, where its glorious white bark lights up the winter garden. It's a very easy tree to grow, very accommodating, fine fibrous roots spread out, and the leaves are always lilting and light, as well as being able to see through it. When they drop to the floor, because they're not big, solid leaves, they make really good leaf litter, which actually helps the growth of plants underneath its canopy. Recognise this plant. We've seen a lot of it in recent years. It's hugely useful in naturalistic plantings, where you want everything to meld and flow together. It's a Persicaria, and it's called Amplexicalis atrosanguinea. It's widespread across the Himalayas, and it's always extremely colourful, always stands up for itself and flowers for ages and ages. It's also brilliant for insects. But at my feet is a different kind of Persicaria. Now it's called Bistorta. It's Bistorta affinis. Has been hugely popular in British gardens for countless years. It's often used in rockeries. In its native home, which is also the Himalayas, it grows in rather moist places, and when you can give it those sorts of conditions, it grows dense and thick like this, glorious spires of pale pink flowers. And if you look closely, you can see these ochre buds coming on, which mean it will flower for months and months on end. Another plant from South Asia, again widely spread across the Himalayas, is this lovely begonia. This is Begonia purpurascens. The second part of its name alludes to the fact that during the winter, these gorgeous glossy green leaves will turn to deep crimsony red. Nothing at all phases this plant. It copes with everything and repays you with this show of evergreen leaves, glossy and green in the summer, spring pink flowers too, but in the autumn and the winter in its real glory with this rich red foliage. Plant hunters have combed the world, searching for plants valued for their medicinal, economic, ornamental qualities. Of course, as far as those gardeners are concerned, it's the last category that's most important. By exploring areas of rich biodiversity, plant hunters have and continue to reward us with splendid plants for our gardens.
End of the 18th and beginning of the 19th century, there were a whole succession of Don plant hunters from Forfar in Scotland. And whilst I'm very proud of that, they weren't all that glamorous. For example, Alexander Don specialised in mosses in the Scottish Highlands of any type, wherever they come from in the world, are probably the most glamorous plant that you possibly can have. And we went to visit Bala Kampali, who works in every aspect of orchids and their conservation and their care at Kew.
I'm a botanical horticulturist working for the last 13 years. My role involves looking after one of the largest collections in the tropical nursery, which is orchid collections in the orchid unit. Orchids belong to one of the largest flowering plant families in the world, with over 25,000 species and still growing. When I was a child, I used to hear about my grandfather's interest in growing plants. He always used to collect seeds from various parts of India and then grow them, and he used to label them very meticulously and look after them. And I started paying interest in plant life, and it became my biggest passion since I was a child. My job is not just creating beautiful displays, it's a lot more than that. My work also involves working with different scientists from all around the world. For example, the orchid species here are used for various taxonomic studies, conservation, research, educating the next generation horticulturists, public displays, festivals, and I'm proud to be a part of it day to day. Working at Kew also provided me an opportunities to travel to various natural habitats where the orchids are growing in the wild. For example, I went to a few field trips to Western Himalayas where I learned how the orchids are naturally growing in their habitat and how I can gain the knowledge from there, bring back to look after them carefully within the glasshouse conditions. Here in Princess of Wales Conservatory, this exhibit reminds me of my home because it shows how orchids naturally grow on their host trees in the wild. Although orchids are distributed in many parts of the world, India has some fabulous species. For example, this one belongs to the genus Tunia. This genus is widespread from Indian subcontinent to China and peninsular Malaysia. And this has a very unique type of pseudobulbs, look like passion. I saw them growing, hundreds and hundreds of them on a big branch of tree, and all the pseudobulbs are leaning, facing the ground, and it looks amazing to see them all at one place. Many of us know what these are. These are the orchids which are commonly seen in the supermarkets, garden centers. We buy them to decorate our windowsills. What many of us don't know is these come from a very humble little plant which is called Phalaenopsis pulcherrima. Phalaenopsis pulcherrima is a particular species which is seen in northeast India, in the state Assam, and they spread up to Hainan in China. And those tiny little beauties are bred over and over and over until they get the desired size and shape and the longevity of the flowers to produce beauties like these hybrid Phalaenopsis or moth orchid. Cultivation of orchids is very simple if we follow a few important things. One of them is repotting orchid in the right time. So, for example, this is a Cymbidium hybrid, which is spectacular flowering one during winter through spring, is ready to be repotted. The first thing is it's pot bound, as you can see. The roots are filling the entire pot, and it's got plenty of new shoots. This is the epiphytic media, which has 3 parts of pine bark of medium grade, 2 parts of pumice, and this is 1 part of charcoal. You can remove some very floppy or dead roots, but usually we leave undisturbed. Place the plant firmly in the middle of the pot and then slowly start filling the compost. Give a gentle tap on the pot so that the compost settles well in the gaps. And when we are repotting orchid, we have to make sure that they are firmly fixed in the pot. That is the key for success of a repotting. So all we need to do is position it and water it very well. I love my job because I can always say that when I come to work, I can always say this is my office. So this passion, it never stops. My aspirations are to expand the living orchid collections, and in that course I will learn. At the same time, I can pass on my knowledge to the next as many future generations as possible.
I love the way that you can go to a botanic garden, sometimes quite near your home, and immerse yourself in another growing culture.
But skill and expertise in gardening isn't just limited to the lofty world of botanic gardens. We found out when we went to visit Raghbir Singh Sanghia, who has the Midas touch when it comes to growing cucumbers.
ਪੂਰਨ ਭਰੋਸਾ ਆ ਮੇਰੀ ਮਿਹਨਤ ਤੇ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਮੈਂ ਅਰਦਾਸ ਕਰਦਾ ਪਾਠ ਕਰਦਾ ਉਹਦਾ ਫਲ ਉਸ ਮਾਲਕ ਨੇ ਲਾਇਆ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਇਹ ਵਿਸ਼ਵ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵਰਲਡ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਚਲੀ ਗਈ ਆ ਮਹਾਰਾਜ ਦਾ ਹੁਕਮ ਆ ਕਿ ਭਾਈ ਤੂੰ ਗੁਰੂ ਵਾਲਾ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਬਣ ਮੈਨੂੰ 50 ਸਾਲ ਹੋ ਗਏ ਅੰਮ੍ਰਿਤ ਛਕੇ ਨੂੰ ਨੋਟੀਗਾਮ ਸਿੰਘ ਸਭਾ ਗੁਰਦੁਆਰੇ 91 ਤੋਂ ਸੇਵਾ ਕੀਤੀ ਹੁਣ ਮੈਂ ਰਿਟਾਇਰਮੈਂਟ ਲਈ ਆ ਬਚਪਨ ਤੋਂ ਹੀ ਬਜ਼ੁਰਗਾਂ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਖੇਤੀ ਕਰਨ ਦਾ ਬੜਾ ਸ਼ੌਕ ਸੀਗਾ ਕਿਉਂਕਮਰ ਦੀਆਂ ਬੇਲਾਂ ਆ ਮੈਂ ਮਾਰਚ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਲਾਈਆਂ ਸੀਗੀਆਂ ਪਹਿਲੇ ਦਿਨ ਜਦ ਅਸੀਂ ਦੇਖਿਆ ਤੇ ਮੈਂ ਨਾ 5-6 ਲੱਗੀਆਂ ਸੀਗੀਆਂ ਤੇ ਉਹ ਸੀਗੀਆਂ ਕਾਫੀ ਲੰਮੀਆਂ ਤਾਂ ਸਾਡੇ ਮਨ ਵਿੱਚ ਦੇਖ ਕੇ ਆਏ ਵੀ ਆਪਾਂ ਐਕਤੀ ਹੈ ਨਾ ਇੱਕ ਵਧਾ ਕੇ ਦੇਖੀਏ ਵੀ ਕਿੰਨੀ ਲੰਮੀ ਹੋ ਸਕਦੀ ਆ ਇੱਕ ਓੰਕਾਰ ਸਤਨਾਮ ਕਰਤਾ ਫਿਰ ਉਰਲੇ ਪਾਸੇ ਮੈਂ ਲਾਗੇ ਬਣਾਇਆ ਸੀ ਉੱਥੇ ਆਪਣਾ ਪਾਠ ਕਰਨਾ ਮੈਂ ਕੋਲ ਬਹਿ ਕੇ ਪਾਠ ਕਰਦਾ ਸਵੇਰ ਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਅੱਧਾ ਪੌਣਾ ਘੰਟਾ ਜਿੰਨਾ ਮੇਰੇ ਕੋਲ ਟਾਈਮ ਹੋਵੇ ਫਿਰ ਅਸੀਂ ਇੰਟਰਨੈਟ ਤੇ ਦੇਖਿਆ ਵੀ ਰਿਕਾਰਡ ਵਿਸ਼ਵ ਰਿਕਾਰਡ ਕਿੰਨਾ ਆ ਤੇ ਉਹ 42 ਸੀਗਾ ਸਾਡੇ ਮਨ 'ਚ ਹੋ ਗਏ ਵੀ ਹੁਣ ਚਲੋ 49 ਹੋ ਗਈ ਸਾਡਾ ਰਿਕਾਰਡ ਬਣ ਗਿਆ ਪਰ ਫਿਰ ਵੀ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਮੇਰੇ ਨਾਲ ਦਿਆਂ ਨੇ ਸਲਾਹ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਵੀ ਹਾਲੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਤੋੜੇ ਨੇ ਹੋਰ ਵੱਧ ਜਾਣੀ ਆ ਤੇ ਹੁਣ ਇਸ ਵੇਲੇ ਇਹ ਵੱਧ ਕੇ 53 ਇੰਚ ਹੋ ਗਈ ਆ ਜਦੋਂ ਮੈਂ ਹਨਾ ਫਸਲ ਵੱਲ ਦੇਖਦਾ ਸਵੇਰ ਨੂੰ ਆ ਕੇ ਤੇ ਮਨ ਹਨਾ ਇੰਨਾ ਖੁਸ਼ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਖੁਰਾਕ ਨਾਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਮੇਰੀ ਸਿਹਤ ਨੂੰ ਇੰਨਾ ਮਿਲਦਾ ਹੈ ਜਿੰਨਾ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਦੇਖ ਕੇ ਮੇਰਾ ਮਨ ਖੁਸ਼ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ ਨਾ ਤਾਂ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਸਕੂਨ ਮਿਲਦਾ
Still to come, we've got more stories from passionate gardeners. Arik goes to visit contemporary Islamic gardens at the Aga Khan Centre in London.
The secret that really works in this garden is how it's drawn in the expansive sky. Now that is very clever.
And Francis meets a group of women who enjoy the health and social benefits of gardening.
You can also use them in salads.
But first, we go to Devon to meet Paul Naveen, who runs a nursery with his partner. Now, they have a wide range of herbaceous perennials.
My love for gardening comes from my grandmother, and she was Persian. During the war, she moved out of the country, grabbed what she had in her hands, and quite literally walked to India. And she had this most wonderful garden in the middle of nowhere with a tiny little house, and she found peace and calm there. And she was always in the garden, and as a child, I remember running around her. She taught me everything I know about plants, really. She was the person that inspired me. We mainly specialize in plants for shade, mostly woodlanders, plants that come mainly from mountains of Japan or China or America. Most of the year we have no sunshine here, so we had to grow something that really would work well. One of the unusual plants we grow is this Petronia triloba, which is a Japanese woodland plant. It's a herbaceous perennial, and it absolutely adores the shade. With this lovely golden yellow flowers and glossy green leaves, it would light up any dark corner in the garden. All it likes is a bit of moisture and really rich soil. And the bees absolutely love it. You can see one there. Another very exciting and exquisite woodlander is this one with very beautiful lavender blue flowers. It comes from the mountains of China, and it's Diananthe cerulean. It looks very tropical in appearance, and it's very closely related to the hydrangeas. With these beautiful serrated leaves, it forms a nice sized clump in the garden, and an absolute must for the woodland garden to give that additional colour for the summer months. This one is one of my favourites. It's from China, and it's called Chloranthus fortunei. It has this lovely bottle brush-like white flowers and 4 leaves just surrounding it, and the flowers actually smell of champagne. As a nursery, we want to encourage people to grow something different, and we want to encourage the younger generation to come forward and try and grow things that are just out of the ordinary. This plant is an Eminopsis macrophylla. It's quite special to me because I sowed the seed of this plant many years ago. It's endemic to the mountains of Japan from Honshu. It's the only species in the genus, and it has these lovely tight purple buds that open into very pale lilac mauve flowers. Absolutely love shade and plenty of moisture. We grow what we really love, and they're rare and unusual, and we like to keep it that way, and we like to grow everything using the traditional methods. 75% of the plants we grow are grown either from seed or by division. This one is Anemone obtusiloba Big Blue, and I sowed this seed last November, and I've been waiting patiently since it's germinated in the spring to bring them out and pot them up. So we're going to pot this up in this mixture of soil here, which is mainly composed of bark and grit for the drainage as well as holding moisture to replicate a woodland soil. So we gently tease them apart and gently tease each one out of here, making sure the roots are still intact. And if you notice here carefully, those two there are the original leaves that it's germinated with, and those two are its true leaves, and those are the leaves that the anemone is going to have for its lifetime. So once they come, then it's ready to be potted. This should root through by early spring, and it will be potted up again into a slightly bigger pot. It should flower by June, and it should be a big enough plant to go in the garden. We'll put a little bit of gravel on top to protect it from slugs and snails, and we'll give it a good water. There are lots of wonderful woodland plants, but my top 3 recommended plants are Viola, Carophyloides benituru, which has stunning lavender purple flowers and long dark stems. And we have Pteridophyllum racemosum with beautiful ferny foliage and clean white droopy flowers, and Chirangeshima palmata with waxy bell-shaped droopy flowers, which are bright yellow. Plants sort of energize you, and they have this great aura about them that sort of cleanses you. You're calm, you're peaceful. When you're out there with the birds singing in the background and you're working, I mean, what else could you ask for? This is like heaven on earth.
Nothing beats the experience of actually gardening. And apart from anything else, it is good for every part of mind and body. To that end, a group of women in Bradford have got together to promote the well-being that comes as a result of gardening. And Frances told me.
An allotment is not just a place for growing your own produce. For many people, it's so much more. For the group of women I'm about to meet, this place is a haven. A place to socialise, unwind, and enjoy the great outdoors. Yasmin joined in 2013 and now helps to run this independent group. So Yasmin, what first attracted you to this project?
I really like feeling the earth and being close to nature. And I like the birds. I get quite a lot of benefit out of it. It's really good for exercise, obviously. Plus, I find it really relaxing to be around other ladies and getting their ideas, and you're getting your own fruit and vegetable, which is healthy, which is more organic, and it's a lot tastier than buying at the supermarket. I love it. Absolutely, really love it.
And I would love to see more of the space. Could you show me around?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
The ladies pride themselves on growing staple veg like spinach, courgettes and potatoes. And Yasmin has a clever and interesting way to use an old salad favourite. So what's this?
These are radishes. We've been picking the radishes and eating them, but then we've let these grow so they can go into seeds. And we pick them at this stage and then we make a curry.
Really?
Yeah. We call them mungre, and you make a potato and pod curry, which is called aloo and mungra curry.
Okay, so aloo is potato.
Yeah. And these are called mungra.
It's radish pods.
Pods, yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
What does it taste like?
It's like a radish, but it hasn't got the heat as a radish. You can also use them in salads.
Ooh,
and
I
eat them
like that a lot.
Yeah.
It's really delicate flavour,
It is,
isn't it? It's like a cross
yeah.
between a pea and a radish.
Yeah.
I'm going to do that. That's delicious.
Yeah, it is.
But it's not all about veg. On another part of the allotment, the ladies are growing something completely different.
This is a dye plant. These are the flowers, and then obviously it goes into seeds, and seeds is what you use to make the dye. And
Yes.
It's a purple, bluey dye.
So why did you decide to grow this? Because everything else here is kind of edible, isn't it? Whereas you can't eat this.
No. Some of the ladies just wanted to experiment, and about 2 years back we made a shopping bag, and we dyed it, and it came out really nice.
Do you all meet each other in the supermarket and go, oh, look, where's your bag?
No, at the moment, but we probably will in the future, yes.
The ladies get together every Monday, and today they're harvesting crops to make a stew. But whilst the vegetables are bubbling, running. How do you think this project benefits the community here?
Well, I think it's really good because we're mixed ages and we're mixed religion and mixed cultures. But because of the social aspect of gardening together, I think that's the most important thing that's happened, that people have benefited psychologically, emotionally and physically. So it's, it ticks all the boxes really for, how to live a better life.
The salad's prepped, the stew looks delicious, and the ladies have even brought in some home-cooked pakoras. Time to tuck in. Thank you for preparing this. It's a real treat. This this allotment is as much about growing fruit and veg as it is for these women to come here and have a place where they can meet members of their community and share their experiences.
I do believe that nothing is better for your holistic health, combining mind and body in harmony, than gardening.
When you experience that at a young age, it can lead to wonderful things, as we found out when we met Chelsea flower show designer Manoj Maldi.
My maternal and paternal grandfathers actually came from very small villages in India. They brought all their traditions from India. We still celebrated Diwali. It was a very colourful part of my life. My dad absolutely loved his roses. When we had our first garden in North Wembley in the UK, he'd ordered lots of roses and we grew those in the garden. My brothers and I actually decided we were going to create our own vegetable plot. And it was that has actually sparked off my interest in gardening. India is such a rich and colourful country, and what I remember from my childhood is my mum's beautiful saris, and I have now started to bring that colour into my garden design. Garden design allows me to create people's dreams, bits of paradise that I can then leave with them to enjoy.
Now, last year I spent a lot of time visiting paradise or Islamic gardens all over the world, but there was one much closer to home that I wanted to see, but which wasn't ready. In fact, it was a whole series of gardens, which are now completed, and Arit has been along to see them in all their glory.
London is a cauldron of design, art and culture, with exciting new buildings and rooftop gardens all the more apparent. But its latest edition of architectural garden spaces encapsulates and blends historic qualities and modern-day notions in this vibrant metropolis. The Aga Khan Centre in King's Cross contains 6 Islamic gardens which take inspiration from across the ancient Islamic world, stretching from southern Europe all the way into the Asian subcontinent. The centre has created these idyllic spaces with the help of award-winning designers, so students, office workers and members of the public can take in their contemporary serenity. Historian Dr. Mehreen Chida Razvi specialises in South Asian and Mughal art at SOAS, University of London, and has joined me to discuss the historical and cultural significance of these gardens. What are the typical traits of an Islamic garden?
If I have to break it down to a very general description, I would say that these are typically walled-in spaces. They're going to have an element of running water in them that will divide the space up into sections. You'll have some lovely green and floral planting. They're very aesthetic, but they're very sensory as well.
Is there symbolism in water in an Islamic garden?
In the Quran, paradise is a garden, and the description that we're given of paradise is that it is a garden and there are 4 flowing rivers in it, and one is of water, one of wine, of honey, and milk. And so the idea of having running water in these spaces, we can sometimes make a paradisical connotation with that.
What type of planting is typically found in an Islamic garden?
You're going to have typically a variety. You're going to have flowering plants, but then you're also going to have green trees. The idea is that throughout the year, you're going to have a continued presence of greenery and nature in these spaces.
So this one's a garden of life, but it's a Mughal garden.
So the Mughals were an Islamic dynasty who ruled over South Asia from 1526 to 1858. And they were existing at a time as part of a wider Persian cultural sphere. And when we look at this particular space, to me it just screams that this is based on Mughal gardens. The chador, which is the name for this particular type of waterfall in the fountain, you can see that it's made of marble. It's got this elaborate fish scale pattern behind, and so when the water is falling down, the sound is being enhanced by it falling down those fish scales. This feature, the chador, you don't find in other Islamic gardens, so it's very much a Mughal feature. Then you have the fact that this is a symmetrical space, and symmetry was an incredibly important aspect of Mughal architecture. They're shaped like the cypress tree, which is indigenous to the region and which we would have found in many of the Mughal gardens in South Asia at the time, and we know that from contemporary paintings and written references. But more than that, the fact that these beds are full of a combination of different plantings, which is not very structured, but which is still very aesthetically pleasing, was what originally Mughal gardens would have looked like. Today, when we go to South Asia and we see them, the aesthetic is completely different, because in the British period, they basically turned them into these formal gardens that were very much appreciated in Europe at the time. So I think it's really wonderful that in this particular space, it's organized, but it's a bit haphazard as well, which would have been very much in a proper Mughal mode.
The gardens in this complex each have their own identity, and it's clear to see why His Highness the Aga Khan has commissioned them. They showcase the remarkable design that Islam brought to the world. This is the Garden of Light. You cannot help but be impressed by these 4-metre-high screens that have taken their cutwork from Jali and Mashrabiyya work that you would see across India and the Middle East. What I love are these hand-carved inscriptions that have been taken from the Quran or from well-known poets. They're absolutely beautiful. The central focal piece is this water feature, an 8-pointed star. It's just giving enough sound to distract you from the outside. The symmetry is so evident in this garden, whether it's the walls, looking at the rills of the floor, and certainly being flanked by these beautiful magnolia trees. But the secret that really works in this garden is how it's drawn in the expansive sky. Now that is very clever. The Garden of Tranquility epitomises the symmetry and geometry that we've spoken about in an Islamic garden. Looking up, I can see that geometry very, very clearly. These 4 marble benches are pivotal in this space. They're going to be needed to help with the socialising aspect that this space has been created for. When the wider development at King's Cross is finished, this garden is going to be able to have the benefit of looking out over a sunny garden whilst remaining in the shade. So that's going to be something so special for all the visitors and office workers to enjoy. To be in a garden is always so visually stimulating, but it's the experience that we all really love, and I feel very privileged to be here at the golden hour.
The Aga Khan Centre Gardens will be open to the public from the 22nd of September.
Certainly, most paradise gardens were designed to be enjoyed as dusk fell and the day drew languorously to a close. And I'm afraid we're now drawing languorously to a close because that's it for today's programme. I will be back next week at Longmeadow, so until then, bye-bye.